Welcome to Nasscom BCG's India Means Innovation podcast. We're excited today to have as my guest a technologist, a foodie, a multifaceted leader, and a truly global citizen, Vijay Sankaran. He is the Vice President and Chief Digital and Information Officer, Johnson Controls. Vijay, welcome to the podcast.
Yeah, thank you so much, Snehil, for having me on the podcast, and I look forward to our conversation.
Wonderful, wonderful. Why don't we get started maybe with the bigger picture? From your vantage point, how do you see the global landscapes of buildings and infrastructure evolving, especially in the light of smart buildings, automation, AI, and then the sustainability layer that goes on top? What are the key trends that you're watching over and actually helping shape at JCI?
Yeah, that's a great question, Snehil, and something that I'm very passionate about, and we're very passionate about at Johnson Controls. I've been a technologist for a very long time, and I've seen the digitization of many different industries over the years. And in most cases, it's just a matter of timing when an industry is ready for and ripe for digitization. And the era of the digitization for buildings is really upon us, and there's really a confluence of major drivers that make that that the ingredients ripe for driving that transformation. And those include, as you mentioned, the optimization of energy inside of buildings. As the energy costs globally continue to rise, and people are looking for different ways to make buildings much more efficient. The decarbonization that's required in order to offset carbon emissions that are being generated from buildings. Including the actual materials that are used to build buildings. 40% of all greenhouse gas emissions come from buildings across the planet. The scarcity of labor to actually fix buildings, as well as the need to create a different kind of experience for people who occupy these buildings in the post-pandemic wave. So you put all of these things together, and it spells out the need to leverage technology and digital and AI and data to treat buildings like many other industries have, whether that's manufacturing plants or airlines or automotives or anything like that. And so we are at Johnson Controls, with our OpenBlue platform, at the forefront of really unlocking those value propositions using digital technologies and AI. So it's something that we see as an accelerating trend as we go forward.
Got it. Innovations historically and traditionally were spaced out over a period of many, many years, often decades. In contrast, in the digital world, with predictive maintenance and digital twins, we're seeing a rate of compounding which is fairly aggressive. Do you see or foresee any challenge in keeping up to this fast rate of innovation from your lens and as a competitive advantage for you with your peers and the broader industry?
I think it's a great question, Snehil. And I mean, it's always a challenge to keep up, with the pace of the wide variety of different companies that innovate in the space. So you have traditional buildings players like ourselves and, Siemens, Honeywell, Trane, Carrier. But then you really also have the multitude of startups, which I think are where a lot of really interesting things happen. And, with startups, there's external capital investment. There's often this, general scrappiness and agility that exists, and sometimes difficult to replicate in a larger organization. And so, we spend a lot of time really understanding what interesting companies are doing. Sometimes we acquire those interesting companies like we did with FM Systems a few years ago, or Foghorn a few years prior to that, to really bolster both our capabilities as well as our culture. And then we try to embrace that sort of scrappy startup type of a mindset, really bringing in talent to focus on AI and innovation. We have one of our most innovative teams right here in Pune, in India, that operates and leads the transformation for our OpenBlue platform, as well as a small team in Bangalore that, we're really excited about. And, they operate with that nimbleness and agility that, many startups do.
Got it. Got it. I read somewhere that you had a quote that said, "Digital is the differentiator behind our technology." Right? As smart infra generates this massive volumes of data, what is your approach to modernization of data platforms? With cloud and there's obviously edge computing and AI. Is there a particular approach you take to being able to get the value out of what your sensors are producing, and how's that transforming the industry and you competitively?
Yeah, I think the landscape of data is changing rapidly because of AI. And I'm a longtime data guy. I started my career in data back in 1995, when we were talking about hundreds of megabytes, and now we're talking petabytes and more, right? Hundreds of petabytes. And so the landscape of data has changed dramatically. And back then it was mostly structured data that had to go through, a very rigorous, extraction and transformation and standardization process. And now, with LLMs and generative AI, everything is changing where you can do it on the fly, you can do it in real time. You got tools like, Microsoft Copilot and Palantir and others out there that, can really do some of that, data wrangling, which, was always one of the biggest challenges, on the fly. And so, we use a lot of those capabilities now in the way that we onboard buildings. We look at the telemetry coming off of buildings. We acquired an edge AI company, Foghorn, that processes more information at the edge. We try to use our cloud platforms to normalize the data with, standard ontologies like brick and haystack in the cloud to, be able to compare one building versus another in a standardized way. But underpinning all of that is AI in terms of, how we onboard those buildings. We built a tool called Robot, which onboards the buildings, leveraging AI-based technologies and standardizes the data flows. We have now a generative AI advisor, for building operators that basically take the fault codes from inside the buildings and translates that, so to speak, into what is the actual fault in the building and what are the recommendations to actually go fix those faults. So the world is changing very quickly, and I can't underestimate the power that generative AI brings to the table for organizations. Having been part of this for a long time, I fast forward 5 years, and the world will be dramatically changed as we know it, just based upon, the introduction of, LLM-based technology and agentic AI now over the next 5 years.
We'll come back to that in a second, but I think you gave me a good segue to your past about, you've held senior leadership roles at Ford, and, a lot of what we see today in what people can probably see and feel is more of the advancements in the automotive space, right? If you look at the spectrum of how digital data and AI is being applied in this new world of self-driving cars, et cetera, are there some parallels of what you're able to bring from that world here, or what can go from here to there more broadly as a technologist that you see and can almost chart out how life will be for a lot of the consumers across the globe in the next 5 years?
Yeah, so first of all, I think in the building space in particular, I'm glad that buildings don't move, because solving, the autonomous building problem is certainly a lot easier than solving the self-driving car. But in many ways, that the whole notion of, we're moving from a society of reacting to data, moving into a society of the data being proactive on behalf of the humans consuming the experience. And so let me give you an example, right? I've had a Tesla in the past, and one of the things I loved about the Tesla was the fact that it's proactive in terms of what's happening. And you see that a lot in many vehicles now, where it tells you that there's traffic forthcoming. Would you like to take an alternate route? Or, now with more computer vision, that there's an object in front of you, would you like, it automatically slows you down, right? And I think it's that the proactive nature of digitization that we're on the cusp of going forward, because versus the reactive nature of digitization and data, where it's dashboards and it's indicators and things like that, where it's like, okay, I'm looking at my health score, I got a 35 today, right?
Yeah.
Rather than, okay, well, what is the software proactively telling me to do in order to get a 75 instead of a 35, right, in terms of my health score. And so it's that proactive nature, which I think you saw in industries very early, like automotive, because you were working in a situation where, due to maybe safety related concerns or optimization of routes, you saw proactive information being delivered. But now you're seeing that much more pervasively across all industries. And then bringing that back to smart buildings, that's exactly what our customers are telling us that they want, is that they want to proactively be notified when a chiller is about to go down. They want to be proactively notified when there's a fan coil in the building that is causing water in my bathroom. They want to be notified what the expected pattern is for employees coming back into the office on a given day, so that they can heat it or cool it appropriately and not have to run that chiller or boiler at full throttle the entire time, right? So it's that proactive nature of digitization that is the big change and shift. And then adding on to that with AI, a much more rich set of instructions on how to prepare for that proactive event. And so that's what's like amazing about what's going on right now.
Wow.
It's that proactive shift to digitization.
Yeah. That's awesome. And I think, coming back to our confluence point in data, what are some of the challenges from a data security lens that, and you see all these Hollywood movies of things that can be remotely hijacked and what have you, right? Tell us a little bit more about, how do you see that playing out, and what are your approaches to being able to make sure this is a very tight ecosystem that gives all that stuff that you just outlined, but with the right amount of controls for both providers and for employees and other people that reside.
Yeah, well, I know that after watching Mission Impossible recently, everybody's a little bit concerned about AI taking over the world, and so fortunately, I don't think that we're quite at that stage yet. But I've also seen Minority Report recently on an airplane, so I think I'm in the same mindset that you're in, and I have board members that are have those same sort of concerns, and so I think it's all about thinking through the architecture of the system and ensuring that you're not sort of leaving to the imagination what AI is doing on your behalf and putting the appropriate guardrails in, right? And so as an example, when you're putting in a prompt, into an AI designed system, how are you ensuring that, that prompt hasn't been manipulated? Where did that prompt come from? Similarly, what are the data sources that you're prompting against? What are the data sources that you're retrieving from? And so, two things I'm very passionate about, in my career are data analytics, expert systems, AI, and also architecture. And so I truly believe that, architecture, whether it's business architecture, systems architecture, data architecture, really are that framework that allows you to build safe systems. And so, at Johnson Controls, we put a lot of energy and emphasis into, both selecting the providers that help us in terms of building those systems. Mm-hmm. We use the Microsoft platform heavily in terms of deploying our AI. Where does that data reside? So I think it's really important that you invest in the right, data lake architecture, the right architecture for supporting the ingestion of data. You have to understand where that data was sourced from, and then really, data cataloging. So I think holistically, it's really important that you invest in a foundational architecture and understand, how your problems are being solved, across the ecosystem. And then that way, it's very much more defensible, explainable. The likelihood that risks manifest themselves is when you don't have a structure, that basically you understand where the risks exist and proactively mitigate those risks.
That's reassuring, Vijay. Maybe we switch to India next for a second or two. BCG and Nasscom did an extensive study, putting out a Vision 2030 document around the ER&D advantage in terms of talent and research and digital and innovation, and how India can be sort of almost the center of that, right? Talk to us a little bit about Johnson Controls India presence, more from an R&D and a digital lens, and we'll come to the business in a second. But what do you see India in your global vision, in terms of driving product and digital innovation and engineering excellence from a Johnson Controls lens, please?
Sure, that's a great question. So first of all, I have been doing business in India as it relates to digital and R&D since about 2006. And when I first set up, an operations center in Chennai with Ford Motor Company. And so I've been able to see the evolution of India shifting from primarily sort of a shared service into, an R&D and innovation hub for multinationals globally. And to watch that transformation is amazing. And I would say, pound for pound, I'd match the talent here versus anywhere on the planet Earth in terms of the innovativeness and the cultural savvy and the can-do attitude of the talent that exists here. And nowadays is not just from the IITs of the world, but it's also from the Maharashtra Institute of Technologies and more local and regional universities that provide that kind of talent. So first of all, the talent is amazing here. For Johnson Controls, we have been in India for well over a decade at this point in time. This center in Pune was established over 10 years ago. We have had engineers in Pune and now Bangalore and some in Mumbai, really working to innovate some of our most critical products. So a large part of our controls development for Metasys, is done here in Pune and Gurgaon as well. A lot of our security product investment and R&D is done here, as well as fire. And in the early 2020s, we started all of our digital platform developments here in terms of OpenBlue as well. And so, and the predominant investments around OpenBlue and development and innovation is all done here in Pune and in Bangalore as well. And so we are very strong believers in the value that gets created out of the talent pools that we have in our sites in India. And I will say, I come here at least twice a year to these sites to visit the teams. I'm always energized when I come here, just about the can-do attitude of the teams, the willingness to experiment and try new things and pivot, and the agility. So it is actually, I would say, the one place on the planet where you see all of the R&D of Johnson Controls come together. So it's pretty
awesome.
impressive.
That's awesome. I'd love to talk a little bit about the culture of innovation, but linked to that is what I would call co-innovation, right? One of the things we see across the world is a lot of startups, and you mentioned it very early on, doing a lot of cool stuff. Are there any particular examples and models where you are working with ecosystem partners or startups with the idea of co-innovating, and has any of that translated to something of that kind even in India?
Yeah, I mean, we explore a lot of different opportunities to co-innovate around digital, and we have had a long relationship with Accenture as an example around some of our employee experience innovations. That team has largely been based in Bangalore. That we work with them around, and our companion product, which is really focused around how employees can have everything from personal comfort to food and beverage ordering to now integrated into a robot for a big Middle Eastern customer. Is all done through some co-innovation that we did with Accenture. So we had set up a relationship back in 2022 to create sort of an open blue innovation center in Bangalore with them, and so that has really borne some positive fruit in terms of that co-innovation. And just like that, we're exploring opportunities for co-innovation with other partners based in India as well.
That's great. One of the key things, or the flip side to innovation or success, is failure, right? How do you remove the fear of failure, coming from a research and technology lens, and encourage experimentation, and almost sort of, drive this kind of, virtuous flywheel of being able to go out there and try what might seem like impossible? What's the spirit like here, both in Johnson Controls India and more globally across the tech?
That's what we talk about all the time, as a team. And there's a book that I love called Little Bets. And, little bets it's really about how do you make lots of small bets, knowing that a large percentage of them will fail.
Yeah.
And then the ones that, are successful, you then select and amplify, to create those exponential results. So it's like the strategy of seed, select, and amplify, and so that's really what, when I come here, I really try to teach the teams, around, the power of, basically doing a lot of little things and then figuring out which ones create the most value and amplify that. I just did a Gemba yesterday, where Gemba is Japanese word for go see, of the finalists from our tech challenge here in Pune. 17 different ideas that I walked from station to station, having each team do a pitch for me, in terms of the value that is getting created through the technological bets that we're trying to make, and then giving them all feedback around, whether or not it connects back to the value proposition for the business. Many of those ideas, they won't, make it to market, but that's okay. Sometimes it's the learnings that you take away from that, and the recombination that you take on for the next set of ideas that generate that breakthrough through concepts. That's really ultimately what innovation is all about at the end of the day. And so we really want to encourage that here in the culture.
Super. Let's talk, maybe as we come towards the end of the podcast, about markets and opportunity from a market lens, and in India in particular, right? So, how do you see, as a commercial opportunity, the India market playing out for Johnson Controls, given the rapid urbanization as well as economic growth that India's been driving, right? Now a world number 4 economy, soon to be the top 3. What does that mean from your business lens, and are there pockets that you think that you and your teams are looking to focus on?
I think when I look at the Indian market, I would say easily it represents, one of the top 5 biggest opportunities for Johnson Controls, if not top 3. And the reason I say that, unfortunately, we are not entering an ice age on the planet anytime here in the near future. And the world is only getting hotter every single day. And climates and humidity, are continuing to be volatile. And, having experienced India in the summer, there's a deep need for cooling technologies, across this country, where, there's more and more demand for, middle class, luxury experiences, and also for comfort, personal comfort, in different facilities. So we're in the cooling business, and so there's a great demand that's emerging here in India for that. That's number one. Number two is, you look at data centers and the growth and appetite for data centers and AI-based consumption and just general cloud consumption continues to rise at an exponential level. And when you look at the localization and nationalization strategies that are being adopted here, there's a lot more data centers that are going to be built all across this country in different ways. And again, those facilities require technologies around, cooling, air handling, air distribution, which is a primary part of our business. So again, another large growth opportunity. And then finally, as you just generally look at the smart building space, in many ways, India is a leader around wanting to drive more sustainability and more intelligence into buildings as we go forward. And so, just in terms of digital platforms and controls, India continues to see growth in that particular lens. So we're super excited about the Indian market and, what our capabilities, can create value here for customers and users of the technology. So it's an exciting time, to be in India and see the growth here.
Wonderful. On that promising note, maybe we move to the end of the podcast with some rapid fire fun fact bits. So let me try and see how this works out, right? Outside of India, what's your favorite country to visit?
Favorite country to visit? Well, I have been all over the world, and maybe I'll talk about some of the fun places I've been to. But this past spring break, I was in Europe. I was in France and Germany, and I really always enjoy Germany because it's a perfect mix of culture and technological innovation that you don't find in many other places in the world.
That's not an answer I'd expected, but that's great. Favorite food to eat?
Favorite food, that's easy. And maybe this is a place I'd like to go in the future, but I love sushi. So I would like to go to Japan at some point. It's not a place. And again, going back to that efficiency and technological innovation, it's probably a place I'll enjoy. So.
Indeed. I know you're a tennis buff. We spoke about it earlier. Alcaraz, Sinner.
How about Djokovic?
That's a good one.
I'm still old school, man. So, I missed the big four, and, those were formative years of my tennis experience. So, yeah, I don't know. I just can't get as motivated into the Alcaraz and Sinner. Maybe they're just too good. It's like they're like the AI of tennis. So.
I know. 22 and 23. So, wow,
Yeah.
that's some tennis out there, right? Vijay, it's been a pleasure talking to you. I want to wish you and the Johnson Controls team the very best in your innovation journey. And I really look forward to catching up again with you soon.
Thanks so much, Snehil. And I look forward to our next interaction together.
Wonderful.